the issue you're trying to deal with.
Okay.
And it was, on the other hand, it was really, and this is, I was find the beauty of it. It was really a space for appropriation and to, without any pressure and without to deliver anything, to help build your project, or even not at all.
Right.
Which was my case. Because it was all about like understanding that your activism is really linked to your own self-development, and that, for example, what we identify is like the collective burnout within the activist community. And at that time, I was experiencing a burnout from my project, with the problem that we were trying to deliver a quality product, but because participation voluntary, it was thus unequal. And when people were like not doing their job, I was doing it for them. Within the so meaning that it was basically it was a space for you to grow and to help you follow up the leadership that you've been starting, in a way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
A little bit, yeah. I think, yeah, what you're saying about activist burnout, I think makes sense, because people like work really, really hard, and there's often very little reward, it seems, and you don't know.
And
like, yeah, it's very uncertain.
So it was, for example, like there was like, you remember there was the this international economic conference in Hamburg not so long ago, and there was a set of artists and activists who've been doing this performance through the city about people in clay moving around the city, and just right before the start of the conference, they were like pulling themselves out of the clay. It was really symbolic.
Well, it's like kind of like a birth ritual or something.
Yeah, and everyone, like the clay was obviously really neutral color, and people were like freeing themselves from the clay, were all like super colorful outfits. And for example, this was one of the example of people that have been working within the camp on how to build a collective identity within the activism that we do, which is kind of on the continuum of data activism, but I agree with you. It's true that there's some things that might not have been investigated enough.
Well, so actually, I have a point, which is maybe you have thoughts on this, which is quite interesting. So at university, there was like the biggest activist campaign I think that I saw while I was there was called Divest Harvard, which was basically like we want Harvard's endowment to stop funding fossil fuels and to move away from these kinds of like dirty investments. And it'd been going on for years and years, and there were like small wins and small losses and all this kind of stuff. And on my graduation, the president of the university spoke, and she was basically like, why aren't you guys more activist? She was like, why aren't you, you need to be fighting me harder, which was like, no, you have that reaction. But it was interesting because, but she said it it wasn't in a derogatory way. It was like in a form of support. It's like, I really support the things that you're working hard on, which was kind of which was interesting because she was in some ways the person that they were fighting. And yet at the same time, she was saying like, no, I really want you to succeed, and like you should be going harder. And she was referencing moments from her own youth and like talking about when she was in that position and the kinds of things that she wanted to fight for. And I thought that was really interesting, because do you feel that there is a sense of activists feeling a bit lost, or as though they don't know quite what they're doing, or like activists from previous generations had maybe fewer qualms about the kinds of techniques that they would use, or felt like more equipped in some ways? Like, and I guess this ties into this label of like social justice warrior, or there are in modern discourse there is kind of this derogatory way of speaking about activists, like, oh, they're not getting real jobs, or like, oh, they're all
exactly
broke and stuff. Like, how does this tie into a collective activist identity?
I agree.
And is it difficult to like sustain the moral high ground or something?
Exactly.
Right? Like how long can you sustain yourself?
And also because I think like not any activism is perfect, because sometimes within your activism you also tend to reproduce what you're, you know what I mean, when you
right.
try,
and
when,
no one's perfect.
you know
right?
what I mean, or when you're trying to have like new modes of governance, but you indirectly reproduce hierarchical division of labor in a way, right?
Or and it's difficult to forgive yourself in some way. Like if you're a capitalist, it's like as long as you make money, then everything is forgiven in some way. Sorry.
No, it's like I moved too much, but no, I agree. It's difficult to keep the momentum up.
Yeah.
And to keep the emotional engagement, because it depends on what you're fighting for, but sometimes like things are really long and need a sustained engagement from critical mass, coming back to the idea that we talked about in Civic Tech. And if you frame this very problem within the fact that within Civic Tech there is no business model that sustains its philosophy and ethics, you can have a problem of sustainability.